people can, I suppose, always can tell me smile. There's nothing wrong with me. I was, smile on the inside. I was fine, but I just didn't get it. Didn't understand it until I met my partner now. But I just didn't get it. I dated guys. I did all the normal things. But then when I did meet somebody, it was kind of, that's what it was. I remember explaining it to somebody that, like, imagine your heart and feeling kind of a ton weight just kind of pulling down on it. That's what it was for me. But I still didn't know what it was.
I suppose when you go through puberty, that's when everyone gets their strong emotions. It became very strong then. I remember like really fancying a teacher and just tried to ignore it completely. I suppose then I knew, I'm gay, and maybe, and I couldn't, even like, it wasn't going away, but I still wanted to hide it. I was just terrified of being found out. It was just terror, and like even it kind of went into my psyche. I was kind of watching how I behaved, how I walked and everything, and it kind of created this paranoia, I think, which I still have to some extent today, which comes out when I'm hungover. But I definitely think like that repression of such a strong feeling, because I think there's some people I hear, they might come up later in life and the voice of being gay, this inner voice that they're gay kind of happens quite late, maybe in their mid-20s even. But me, it was just like, once I hit puberty, 12, 13 years of age, it was like this huge force of nature. And then trying to repress that, I think it definitely caused a lot of issues, I think, that still entangling to this day.
About 6th class primary school, there was a sex education talk, and the man that came in to the school said that, some of you, it was an all boys national school, some of you may start developing feelings for members of the same sex, but that this was perfectly natural stage of development, but they would pass. It's just your hormones kicking in and whatever. So I used to always wait then for it to pass, and it wasn't passing. And as I was getting that little bit older, I was only ever attracted to men.
I was about 13 years of age when, leafing through the agony columns of mainly women's magazines that my mother had, that I came across a problem where the person said, "We think our son is a homosexual," and I'd never seen the word before, so I looked it up, and when I read the definition in the dictionary, it described exactly what I was experiencing, and I suppose it was the first moment of liberation for me. I remember at the time there was a part of me wanting to tell everybody, and almost ironically, with a certain amount of pride, this is me, that I've discovered who I am. But again, all these little voices in my head, something was telling me don't, and I didn't. But that was my first awareness of me being who I am, or at least putting a label on it. But being able to put a label on it, the fact that the word was in the dictionary meant that I wasn't the only person. Therefore, there must have been other people like me. So, ironically, I felt a little bit more normal. It was only again that I began to discover, well, it's not as normal as you think. But still, it's a moment, like the great moments of revelation.
Because a lot of guys were doing things anyway, So it was only, I suppose, from 20 onwards I was saying, is this ever going to go away? Whereas some of the fellas you had carried on with had seemed to slip out of it and starting getting interested in women or something like that.
I would have been 10, and my friends back then happened to discover their parents' stash of pornographic videos, which back in 1980 was a big deal because not many people had video recorders, and I mind pornographic videos. They were kind of a wealthy family, so they dragged me in one day to look at this video, and I was just like gobsmacked. What the heck is all this? And I remember being more interested in the male than the females, while they were going like, "Oh my God, look at the females," and I was going, "Yeah, okay." It doesn't do anything for me. That's when I knew I was. My first kind of strikingly knew I was different.
Well, I suppose around 10 or 11, I was in school and they were all raving about this lovely, good-looking teacher that was female, and I found nothing attractive in that woman whatsoever. So that was kind of, I felt, oh, that's unusual. So I presumed that would be my first time feeling a bit outside the group. You know, I always kind of, when they were talking about homosexuals or gays, I always kind of backed away. It was too close to home, so I kind of just blocked it all out. So yeah, but mostly negatively. It wasn't really very positively spun in that way. And I had a neighbour who was gay, older, and like he was always called the queer and stuff, so I didn't see it very positively. It was always kind of a bit more negatively at the young age.
There was definitely this feeling that, like, it's weird to describe, but people want to look at you differently and see you as a different person.
I remember saying to one friend, "Look, I'm just letting you know I'm gay and I want to tell you myself." And that's fine. And Tracy is the one that is your partner. I'm like, how did you know? Obviously spending an awful lot more time. But I turned around and I said, "By the way, I don't fancy you." I said, "Why'd I even say that?" She said, "Why wouldn't you fancy me? What's wrong with me?" It's like, "No, what I mean is don't let it affect the friendship." So I was the one that had more of an issue with it than they did. And I said to another friend who's over in Australia again, and she, "Oh yeah, I knew." I'm like, the element of surprise was gone.
I fought with the word gay for a long, long time and associated myself. I think I was maybe 18 or 19, maybe 20, before I actually associated with me. You know, I think it was always banded around there that this is what gay was, you know, but until I realised that actually this is me was about 18, 19. Queer as Folk was on during college. Queer as Folk was on the telly. I was in Galway, and I was sitting there, and I remember it coming on and dying to look at it. But how could you bring up with your housemates that you wanted to see it without them thinking you were gay? So I used to sneak down to the later on the evening time. It was on. It was repeated sometimes the evening time, and thinking that this was just amazing, so liberating.
I was a good Catholic boy and used to go to confession regularly. And you got the message that you could murder all belonging to you, but my God, anything to do with sex was you were finished. And so there was an enormous amount of guilt. So the whole thing was fear and guilt, and therefore, because there was fear and guilt, you tried to avoid it really as much as possible. But you know, you're human, you're a teenager, you're hormonal, and sometimes it would burst out. And then, you know, there would be enormous guilt. And it is now, when I see people in their teens who are gay, behaving in healthy ways, going out mixing, having fun, forming relationships, that I have this enormous sense of sadness and loss, actually, around all of that.
It brought a slight comfort at the time, but then when I realised that I was now, you know, it wasn't hormonal, it was something specific, it brought its own fears. You know, it's like, oh my God, how am I going to be this gay man in, you know, and when do I tell people, who do I tell? You know, it was almost like you were committing a crime. You know, you felt like, you know, your world would end once you acknowledged it out loud to someone for the very first time. My very first time telling Aoife and stuff, you do feel a big weight is lifted off your shoulder, but that weight kind of falls back fairly quickly, because I don't think as gay people we ever really stop coming out. You know, there's always a new job, there is always a new friend, there's, you know, and you end up having to tell them, no, or not tell them, they find it, you know, they'll know or whatever, you know, but you're always kind of on the defensive, maybe. Like, you have your momentous initial coming out experience, which is a milestone in your life, but then you'll always have the little one, the little pebbles that will always just attach, and, you know.
You don't know what people say behind your back, then, like, I'm pretty sure there was some, when the people I was involved in soccer teams with, when I got out there, I'm sure there was a few chuckles behind my back, but I was maybe strong enough that I wouldn't be challenged, never cause any hassle, you know, after that. And to be honest with you, when I was playing soccer, I mean, I was out to play soccer, wasn't it? So looking at every fella from a gay point of view, and the process, you know. And no, I never had any hassle with the people that I did come out with. In general, the people who called queers still call people queers, you know, and that happens to this day. Like, I was coming out of Lovers there about 3 months ago, late one night, and just came out the door, banged the door behind me because it was late, and I had to kind of step back because there was a fellow walking up the road, and he walked by, and next he looked back and shouted back queer or something at me. That was only 3 months ago. Like.
I wasn't banging the drum on the street that I was gay, you know, but up here it was, or down here I should say, it was different because I was in a position whereby I was known as being gay, and that was quite liberating. I think it was quite nice to be who you were.
But coming out was very different because I came out to myself first initially, which is always the big step, I think, and then I was out to my family, and my mum and dad, they're older, someone told them, so I didn't have the chance to tell them. I would have never told them, I don't think. They would have just clicked eventually, I would have thought, but I didn't actually come out to them. Someone rang home, said there were whatever, there was rumours and there was drama, as there would be. But my sister knew 2 years beforehand, and my brother knew, so it wasn't a huge earthquake shock because I had some support, but it was awful. I would never, parents at that stage, they were late 50s, early 60s, they just weren't the type to be, you know, gay was a big issue. With all the stomach problems, the ulcers and the perforated ulcers and the hospital visits, that was definitely to being not happy. I was hiding myself away, so I internalised everything, and instead of going on mad drink and drug, and I obviously got ill. I didn't make myself ill, but I think not living my life, all that stress and angst gave me an ulcer, then perforated. So the years when you should be out clubbing at 18 to 24, I was kind of in hospital all the time. So I missed all of that. But in another way, it kept me away from it because I was too sick to go anywhere. So I didn't have to deal with it. But I do think internalisation, I definitely did do more damage to myself by not coming out sooner. I definitely think medically, I wrecked my head. I didn't have a breakdown or anything like that, but it internalised straight to my stomach. It was a weak spot, and it just plagued me. If you're not true to yourself, you have to. Something has to go. If it's not drinking drugs, something has to suffer. Mental health. In my case, it was physical health, but it was from mental to physical, obviously. But I mean, it got me out of a situation because I didn't have to deal with the reality of being gay then. Because when you're sick in hospital and dying for breath, and in some cases, you don't really have issues with sexuality or trying to live a life and go clubbing. Because I hadn't that opportunity because I was too sick to care. So in one way, it was very negative, but it kept me away from dealing with the real issues. No, eventually it had to come out. The real issues had to prepare, but I don't see issues in a bad way. I just think, like, for me at that age, it was always going to be an issue. Being gay was going to be always problematic. I just didn't see it very positively.
In one of the gay, in my experience, it was hiding, denying, feeling down. Why am I gay? I don't want to be gay. You know, my self-esteem was shattered for most of my 20s because of it. I just, you know, hiding things like that really takes a lot of energy. The fear was there, that's why you hid it, like, you know. But the fact that I was tall, you know, I wasn't very camp, you could say. It was easier for me to hide it, but I had a lot of sympathy for guys who would have looked and acted camp through no fault of their own, like, you know. They had it much harder than I ever had, so I had an advantage in that regard. Because a lot of people were shocked when I told them I was gay, they just didn't expect me to be gay.
I also had a thing against the Irish bars in those days were always kind of dark and kind of cavern-like and excluded daylight. I actually wanted this really open, bright bar that kind of kept all the old features of the bar, but would introduce kind of modern things into the space, you know. So bright colours and kind of funky door handles and all this kind of stuff I was into, you know. So in those days when we started, loafers became very, very much a sort of it was a name that was bandied about a lot in those days. It became very alternative, yeah. So we got lots of gay people, obviously, because we were two gay men who stood behind the bar in our own bar. Lots of art students, lots of students generally, lots of kind of interesting older people who liked the music. We played really good music as well, yeah. We started selling bottled beers like Beck's and Stella Artois, which nobody did.
when I started the other place first, there was a sign over the door that used to say Gay Project Cork. And we had the bottom unit and the other place it was empty. And at Halloween or things, I'd go down and stick things up on the windows and, for a Halloween party, a Christmas party, whatever. And you like celebrating it. And I remember sitting we had a front door and a back door, into the centre. And I remember sitting in the window, putting stickers onto the front window. And you'd have these people looking at you and looking up at the sign, realising what the sign said and looking at you and kind of going, And as the time went on, we changed the sign because the downstairs became a barber shop, so we had a smaller sign. And it went from being the Cork Gay Project to the other place, LGBT Centre, Resource Centre and Cafe. And there was a lot more people came in then, because people didn't want to be labelled as, gay building, but when the barbershop went downstairs and when LGBT was put up, the normal people don't know what LGBT is, so they come up and say, oh, that's grand, I just got a haircut or something. Unless people start using the back door and more people start using the front door. I got people coming in on the front door and going out the back door, so their face wouldn't be seen to the traffic. Like, people put so much thought into coming in there.
I found with Alternatives Cork that at the start, when we first started it off, it was mainly just gay. Do you know what I mean? It was just gay people, came to the show. And then the second year you could see gay people's friends coming along. Then the third year you could see just gangs of straight people coming in because they heard it was such a good laugh and it was so different. But I think it definitely influenced Cork. I think it opened up a lot of people's minds to diversity and to people's sexuality as well. And I think it also helped the gay scene to unite a bit and create a bit of competition, but it kind of pulled a lot of people out of the woodwork who wouldn't necessarily be on the gay scene all the time. And I think there was a lot of friends made from Alternatives Cork.
I used to stress, I don't drink, so I used to go on the bus and I used to be getting ready at home, and I used to 10 bus now, because at that stage I knew no one, so I used to go on my own. And it's down in the middle of town, but it's down a very dark street, so when you walk down, it's two kinds of doors and one's kind of closed off, but not knowing it, I used to have to knock at the wrong door. So the first few weeks, because I was like slow, knocking at the wrong door, no one come out to me, and eventually then I kind of case the joint and go out again and come around, and eventually I learned that there was cameras inside, so they were all watching me, laughing at me, because over the time they said, like, you were always going to the wrong door, why didn't you pick the wrong door? And you had to be a member at that time. So the first few times was a nightmare, walking in, and this big burly bouncer, and he'd say, you know where you are? And then I'd say, yeah, cringing. Then he'd be behind the counter taking your coat, and I said, hope I know no one. You walk up the stairs, then you open the door, and everyone turns, and then you die. And then after a while, you kind of, once I'm in there, then I'm fine. It's just initially getting inside the door was a nightmare. For about a month to 2 months to get used to walking in there. The other place was amazing once you had a click. Once you were a part of it and you had someone to kind of, you had someone to walk in with. I think if you could just grab someone in the street when you were going in there first and have someone just beside you. Never to speak to, just to have physically a body beside you. The loneliest part was walking in, because everyone's looking at you, and if you stand out for all the wrong reasons, because I'm new, I don't drink, and they never saw me before, like, they're going, who's that weirdo? I was walking to toilets instead of going, hanging my coat. I didn't know where I was going, totally lost. You open that door and there's a big red wall, and they take the coat off you, and they tell you it's upstairs, and like, I'm useless, like, I'd fall over, I'm clumsy. I need to be like a chaperone to the seat. But it was brilliant, I must say. It was the best nights of my gay life, but the starting point was very difficult.
Actually, my friend Paula, who I mentioned, brought me to the other place. But at the time, it was down a really dingy, dark alleyway, and you had to knock on the door to be left in. And we didn't know that. We were walked up and down the alleyway, and they were obviously looking at us through the cameras, I don't know, giggling or whatever. But in the end, we knocked on the door, and they opened, and they said, sorry, it's for only members only. And I was turned away. And I was like, how am I ever going to meet another gay person? Like, it was like, it's funny really, because most of my friends from Cove turned out to be gay. A lot of my neighbours turned out to be gay. But at this stage, I was 19. I didn't know that they were gay entirely. I might have had my suspicions, but and so I didn't know anyone, and I was just like in this world, where am I going to meet someone else? I believed I was the only gay in the village, as most of us do. And So being turned away from the other place was a bit of a shock.
I mean, I loved Douglas Street as well. I loved when Douglas Street was almost like the gay Castro of Cork, and it was like the postman was gay, there was the pub, there was a few other things.
And it was the early 80s. There were quite a few old men who would start drinking at one end of the pub and work their way along the street, and would always come into me. And I've great memories of some old guys like with soft hats and pipes and whatever, and would always drink. And even when the bar got busy, and even when the bar became quite gay, those guys still came in. I loved that. I loved that. No, I was always particularly attentive. I loved that anyway.
You were the port of call for them, you know, to come in. So I suppose it was just a matter of getting them informed about what was happening, you know. And I suppose a lot of your time in the other place was spent tidying and cleaning and talking to people. Like, it was a cafe, but for me it was more to sit down and talk to the older generation who were only gay when they opened the door. When they stood inside that building, they were gay then. They weren't gay outside. They could sit, and you know, that was quite sad in a way too, that you had people who only were themselves when they walked into the door.
GayCork.com became a kind of a safety net for me to go to, and they were always very welcoming, and I know a lot of people saw them as a clique within themselves, but they were always open to anyone to come in.
It had a huge effect on many other people as well. I never really appreciated it at first, because I know people now to this day, how many years later, nearly 15 years later, that are have relationships from that website from the very start. It's pretty amazing. Lots of relationships, lots of friendships, lots of people who came out, and so on. I should say that Link also back then had their own website, and they had a forum. So they were technically the first website in Cork with a chat forum, but for some reason it just died very quickly. Maybe because of us, I don't know. And way back then, people were suspicious because they just didn't get the net. But now people know what it is. But they're probably even saying what is Gay Cork these days, because it's all about Facebook. It doesn't play that role for people's lives. But I have no problem with that. I see how things move and change consistently, like, you know, because this, I never set the site to be there forever, kind of, you know, to be what it became, something I never planned or expected. It just happened organically, but it's had a huge effect on my life. In many ways, I met my husband because of it.
I remember when Gay Cork first started, I remember like really like it was definitely felt like this is part of the gay movement, and it was changing things, how people met, there was so much debate going on it as well. It was really busy at one point. Sometimes there was loads of people just creating arguments. It was like the drama that would be happening sometimes in the bars was happening in forums, but it was just giving people voices and just discuss different things, and that was definitely part of the new kind of younger people. And I mean, we were lucky to have that technology, and I think it was really positive for us.
I remember when I came first, there was a lot more young fellas running around and screaming faggot up the stairs. You know, there was a lot of that when I started first. There was a lot of the younger people coming in were so okay with themselves. But I think once time starts to lapse, in the very early stages, you had the feeling that there was nowhere else for them to go. You know, that this was the only place for them, that they felt at home here. They felt that this was where they belonged. This is the only place that they could be themselves. But as time went on, it was kind of evident that they were quite comfortable in other places, and they didn't only have to come here, which was quite nice. And I've made that the work that was happening was working. That there was, you know, or young fellas coming in and saying that they got a shift or a kiss or scored in Crane Lane. It's like, oh, thank God, you know, thank God they don't just have to go to Chambers to meet somebody. You know, that this can happen anywhere. You know, I think that was the realization that I got, that it was quite satisfying. You know, I suppose the other side of it was too that the changes I saw was that a lot of people come and go. You know, I suppose the saddest part of the other place was that you went through people through the hardest times, but so you'd be supporting them and helping them through their bits and pieces, and you get to know them, and then suddenly they wouldn't come in anymore, and you wouldn't hear about them anymore, and that was kind of tough, like, because you'd gone to someone about coming out and telling the mum and telling the dad and telling the brothers, telling the school friends, or telling whoever they were coming out to, and like talking through that process, and suddenly then they were out, you weren't needed anymore, you know, and I think that's probably one of the toughest things of working in there, you know.
When I was involved in the Reach group, you were bringing people together because they were gay. But that's almost like bringing people together because they're human. And, you know, being gay mightn't have been enough to bring people together, ironically. Being gay and maybe struggling with it, and that would be a reason for people gathered together in a group, all right. But take away the struggle and just, you know, a place for, you know, people who are gay to meet, I think that becomes very difficult.
It was kind of tough to go on the scene sometimes. It was a bit intimidating. I think some people would just be happy to go to straight bars for a while and go to clubs like Frig Scene, which would have been like a lot of the alternative bars were kind of open to all types of people. But then at the same time, there was this real excitement. There was this feeling of like being part of this underground movement, and it was like this kind of rebelling against society, which I loved as well. And when you did meet someone, if you're walking, maybe you might hold hands with them for like a couple of seconds outside the club, would you be careful? You felt this really kind of like you're taking on the world or something, or you're doing something really countercultural.
I also liked when it was a little bit more underground and a little bit more when there wasn't so many gay bars on the high street, on the main street. I kind of liked when it was a little bit more not okay to be gay, because it kind of like brought out a lot more kind of characters and kind of fun, and a lot of more interest in nights and club nights, and you know, the music seemed to be better. Now it's just like, personally, I feel that when you go into a gay bar, you could be just going into any bar. The music is the same as the music is the exact same as any other regular, night that you go to. So there isn't anything really diverse, I don't think, about the gay scene anymore.
I have great memories of the early days of the gay scene in Cork. I have many memories of going into the other place as it was back then and dancing on the disco at the ground floor. In all reality, let's face it was a kid, but it was all we had back then. It was fun. I used to remember the camaraderie in the lane afterwards when the club closed. The queues to the toilets, which weren't really very nice either. Then Taboo opened, which was excitement at the time, but again, it was a tiny bar. But the big shock came when Instinct opened. That was like the first proper big gay bar in Cork. They opened there on Oyster Lane, which is like, oh my God, amazing for everyone at the time. And again, many happy memories of going there. And even that lane, when they were allowed to drink, people used to drink in the lane. It was interesting. It was fun, a popular place. But sadly, that all changed when Instinct suddenly moved to a different venue, probably driven by greed with the building boom at the time. It just, from there onward, the scene seemed to change quite a bit. No one really liked the new Instinct venue. It was kind of a rush job. It didn't really work very well. Then we had Ruby's starting, which kind of took a lot of people off them and didn't go down well with the management at the time. But hey, it was a better bar to go on Friday nights. But when Ruby started, I felt old in there. And then with time, Chambers opened, and in effect you could say it killed Instinct, but then again I think Instinct was their own fault in many ways, because they go bankrupt and so on. So we had another bar called Flux, which didn't really last that long either, and I think they merged with Instinct and became Influx at one stage, but I think it only lasted a week or two or something like that.
There were two middle-aged men who were, for all intents and purposes, West Cork farmers, right? Completely done out with wigs and makeup, they did nothing to disguise the fact that they were men. They didn't do anything with their voices to disguise the fact. Why would they? I suppose. So they were talking with West Cork farmers' voices. And one of them was drinking a pint of Carling. I think the other one was drinking a gin and tonic. And they were wearing the most appalling dresses I've ever seen, made out of fabric that looked like your auntie's curtains. You know, this dreadful brocade kind of stuff. And all I could think of was, fair fucks thee, like, I wouldn't do that if you paid me. I stand behind my own bar, my own gay bar as a gay man, but I wouldn't do that for £1,000, right?
Like, the scene wasn't what I expected. You know, when you go through all those trials and tribulations growing up as a teenager, feeling isolated, you expect when you come onto a gay scene that everyone is going to be friendly, everyone is going to welcome you with open arms, you all have this shared experiences and traumas, but when it actually got there, I was surprised at how cliquish, how unfriendly, not everyone obviously, but it wasn't at all they seemed to carry the insecurities with them a lot more, and it made them a lot more defensive and less trusting, I suppose.
It is a bit nerve-wracking. Like, we're more nervous about it than other people. For example, like even starting school, people always say, oh, sure, once they start school, all their friends, the play dates. Like, don't get me wrong, we're nervous about play dates. Like, the parents going to come here and then they find out we're a couple. There isn't an awful lot out there. Like, we try to get books, for example, for the creche, for the staff, that if Sean asked questions or the other kids ask questions, they'd have it in a book on how to explain. Now, I know there are certain books like, Sean, you're special, we deliberately chose you, and that's how we went about it. But yeah, there's very little kind of... There's a lot of American books to do it, same-sex families, but there's very little here. And although people say, oh, but, times have changed, not that much, they haven't. But even with school and with creche, I have to say, people have been just, we're the ones there. He's got 2 mothers. Oh, okay, yeah. God, he must be delighted to have 2 women to fuss over him. And we're, oh, yeah, okay. You're not going to beat us with a rainbow flag or something, or a rainbow umbrella. And he's starting school now, and met his teacher and just said it to her when we went down for the opening day that, hi, parents, he's got 2 mothers. Fine, yeah, just take a seat. I don't know, are we waiting on a reaction? But we're not getting it. We're not getting the kind of browbeaten kind of, oh, no, he's not going to this school. So, he's, I don't know what we do without him. Oh, I'm going to be crying now. But even when we had our ceremony, he walked us down the aisle.
It's a journey that they can be accompanied on by lots of other people, gay and straight. Their parents, who would probably be much more supportive now than parents would have been way back then. And I suppose there's a certain amount of envy around that. But as I say, that's life. I'm sure there are people, that grew up in the middle of the 19th century. They'd love to have grown up at a time when there was electricity, for example, so.
Like, I was never handed a football and say, here, kick a ball instead, But I guess, because I'm not the most masculine of guys, it must be harder for those that it isn't so obvious, that they must have there must be more of a shock involved for the family and friends when they do come out. Whereas with me, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, so.
She went to the other place, cafe. I just went out of curiosity to see where he went and stuff, and she was very interested, and she said she felt blessed to have a gay son, so I was blessed to have a mother like that. Like
I always wanted kids too, for example, and I never thought that would happen, but the strange twist of fate, again because of gaycork.com, which is kind of funny really. I made friends with 2 lesbians in Milan, and I now have a almost 10-year-old boy called Fionn. He's been raised in Milan with his mothers, so I don't have a lot of interaction with him, you could say, because of the physical distance, but I do interact with him. I see him at least twice a year, if not 3 times. He knows me as his father, but he's primarily been raised by his mothers. So I know that, before I even before I even started on that, I told my parents, and they were delighted because they love grandkids. So as it turned out, I got 2 sisters, and they both had 2 daughters each. So the only son, who happened to be gay, had the only grandson, which is, I think life is funny like that sometimes.
When I look now at people growing up in their teens and coming to terms with their identity and seeing all the support that's there for them, the fact that it's talked about in schools, it's on school curricula, there are books, TV programs, etc., all sorts of things around the place, and most importantly of all, places where they can go and meet other gay people and relate in a normal, natural, healthy way that I didn't have growing up. And it's not just me. No, nobody in Cork had, as far as I know, at that time.
When I first came on the scene, a lot of people had a lot of people were edgy and stuff. And now I think there's definitely people coming out now, and they're coming out in school, and it's not an issue, no issue whatsoever, and it's just completely normal. And then they also, the sad thing is that they have no connection into the kind of any gay rights movement. They might not, pride isn't even on their radar. Being gay to them is just so normal that why is there pride? They don't know the history of all the work that went on before. Maybe with other people, not, I mean, saying us, I didn't do much really, but people who marched, the first people that marched in St. Patrick's Parade, and got things thrown at the Monarch, and all the activity and community work that went on in the 80s and 90s that led to decriminalisation. And
people seem to be more comfortable coming out at a younger age, way younger age than back then, and as well as that then, and maybe related to that you're as likely to see them in any pub now, not necessarily the gay pub. I mean, I know gay young men now that go to any other pub on the street and probably won't bother their arse going to Lovers. They're the 2 big things that I've seen. Plus that there seems to be more generally. They're cropping up all over the place. That'd be the 2 things. I said, the fact that certain people anyway, definitely are more comfortable coming out earlier, and they're trying to flaunt it more. But there's kind of the way they're spreading out to different pubs, and like you have the term gay-friendly pubs now, and they're not such a big thing. Maybe that makes it more acceptable for the heterosexual community to generally accept gay people, to see them in action more often than not.
I'm very envious of them. I wish I could have came out at that age, way back. But then in when I was 18, 1988, Ireland was a very different place back then. There was no bars for gay people. I think there might have been Loafers back then. I don't think the Loafers was even there back then, was it? I can't remember. There was nothing,
Sure, it's very acceptable now. I mean, they're all coming out at 17 and 18. In one way, I'm jealous. In another way, I'd hate to have come out at 17 and 18 in my time, because it was all hidden away. Cork was quite small, and there was only 2 places to go: Loafers, which was openly gay on the main street, and then it was on a dark alley, and you had to sneak in there and sneak out in case you get beat up. It wasn't romantic.
I do think it's different for the younger generation. They have it much easier than we ever had it. Not that I'm saying it's ever going to be 100% easy, but the way society and the society patterns and thoughts are formed now, being gay is just so what kind of experience, as opposed to, oh my God, you're anathema.
What my experience of being gay was, you now had a situation where you could have people committing themselves to one another and creating a family and some kind of stability and some kind of fidelity and all of the good things that are associated with marriage for straight people. So why not have that? if the minority of people in any country who want to get married, as in gay, want to get married, have the power to destroy the institution of family, family must be very delicate. But I see it the other way around. I see gay marriage as a way of creating more family and all that goes with family. Because yes, I believe family is an important part of any society. But there are all sorts of family, and that's what people forget.
Even as I say, for myself and Tracy to have a civil ceremony, to be asked by where we had the ceremony, could they put our pictures up to invite other couples, to show them that they're open to having any type of ceremony. And even then that, we bumped into a lady we hadn't seen in about 10 years, and she knows the owners of the house that we booked out to have our ceremony. And she turned around and said, I knew it was you that had your ceremony there. They were talking about how they cater for all different types of people. So we're put into the category of different types of people. But yeah, no, times have changed in a very short space of time. So hopefully it'll continue on once certain institutes kind of step away from it. Like myself and Tracy, we want to be seen as a couple. We want to have the same rights as every other couple. I want to have the same rights over Sean as Tracy does. I'd get up at the feeds in the middle of the night, discipline, like he sees me as one of his parents. So hopefully I'd like to see more men getting married. I said love.
I think gay marriage is going to come through. I absolutely do. Like the latest polls show something like 70% of people in favour of gay marriage. Now, I don't want to be married, I don't think ever, but I want the choice. And I think that's what an awful lot of us are fighting for, is just simply the choice to be able to, if we want to. And I think that's what a lot of people will vote yes for, you know.
It's like this in many ways. I believe that you have to grab the moment when it's presented to you, because if you procrastinate, it may never happen. Just like with my son, I grabbed the moment, because if I waited or hesitated then, I wouldn't have a son now. So myself and Frank were married. Married recently. Actually, it's almost a year ago. We got married in Copenhagen. But we got married there because we wanted a marriage and not a civil partnership, because we never liked the idea of a civil partnership, which was available in Ireland. Frank used to call it a dog collar, which in many ways I think it is. It's just it's a name. It's not. It doesn't solemnise what we are. There was going to be a referendum in Ireland eventually, but that could be 3-4 years away. We don't know how long this is going to be. So we said, why not grab this opportunity to get married in Copenhagen, and at least our marriage would be legal in other countries in Europe. You know, not all of them, but like in Britain, Amsterdam, Spain, and so on, France even. And so we got married. We got married in the Royal Opera House, overlooking the Royal Palace with the whole view of Copenhagen Harbour. It was the most simplest ceremony you could ever imagine. And I really liked one poignant moment in it, which something we don't hear over here much, is that the registrar was a lovely woman called Geeta, if I remember correctly. She said that you're both joining a union now, but that you're still two individuals and you got to respect each other's differences. And I thought that was a lovely thing to say, because really that's what marriage is about. It's not to be one unit and do everything together, because we will never be that kind of couple anyway, because you cannot be with a person 24/7. It's not healthy, you know. You have to have your own individual activities and lives and so on, in the sense that one person can go out one night and the other person won't be upset over it, you know. Because I saw too many couples back in my early days that were kind of always together, and they'd be fighting over because someone looked at someone else the wrong way, or they went out without the other person, you know. So it's about accepting who you are and just being in love with each other, and accepting differences and getting over the small little tiffs every now and then. But our marriage isn't recognised over here, so, and I think we can register as a civil partnership, but we never did. We just don't want to. We never want to say we had a civil partnership in this country. It's important that we just want to say we're married, not civilly partnered. So in Irish law, we're not married.
I know it's the LGBT community, but the lesbian community is quite separate to the gay community. and the bisexual community may as well not exist, because if somebody says they're bisexual, there tends to be the attitude from a lot of gay people that, oh, it's a stepping stone, and in a lot of cases it is just a stepping stone, but that's not to say it's not a thing, and the transgender community is so small here. So I think that within that system, then you have all these differing people, and then you have all the people, as I said, your different cliques within that. How it works at all, I don't know, is beyond me. I think the only time we ever have a shared interest is if we're fighting for something common, like marriage, or being able to have kids, or it's the only time we come together. But I think as soon as those things are solved, they do tend to go the separate ways. I don't think it's a realised community, it's a pretend community.
I think what has really happened in the gay community in the last couple of years is that we're fighting to get away from centres. And they've fought so hard that now they're sitting behind a keyboard, sitting home behind a keyboard. And it's quite lonely behind the keyboard. And I really think that moving forward is getting them out behind the keyboard and get them into common conversations and talking, Because I think our community suffers from a lot of, mental health issues and depression and hardship, and I think a lot of that is down to the fact that they're not talking and listening to each other. You have Link in Cork, Lesbians in Cork, and they have a great community spirit. But gay men don't seem to want to have the same community spirit as the women, and I don't know what that is.
For me, it never mattered. The scene was just totally social for me. Meet friends. I didn't do parades. I didn't really do all that I wasn't very militant. I didn't want to wave a flag. I wasn't very much proactive in that sense. For me, when I came out, it was hard enough dealing with myself. I just wanted to have fun, make friends, and still be the same person, but just have that outlet at weekends. It didn't become my whole life every week.
And because I think when you're gay, insecurities tend to be greater, and so hence the confrontations tend to be greater. Like, it's never mentioned, but people do fight, I think more so in the gay community. People take more drugs in the gay community. There's more suicides attributed to being gay. There's some survey, I can't quote exact figures, but younger gay people are more attributed to suicide attempts and self-harming. These things aren't being mentioned that much with the referendum, because being gay does mess you up more, in the sense that you have a lot more fighting to do to be more content with yourself. There isn't a community as such. They're kind of smaller communities, as in the group of friends, the hiking group, the choir. They're LGBT communities, but there isn't a greater one. It's perceived to as being one, but there isn't really.
I think one of the saddest things about being gay is that you are constantly telling people. It's not just when I was 21 or 18. When you're meeting new people, constantly you're telling people, and that is very, it's hard, that you're always having to tell people about your sexuality.
When we were in the hospital, there was another same-sex couple who had been to claim fertility as well as when Sean was born. The midwife had told us. She couldn't say who and where they were. So there's more people like me out there. Yay!
I think that, history, they no matter how much they might know, you can't really appreciate it unless you live it as much. Like, even our experiences are nothing compared to the experiences of the men that came before us, before there was a scene, when it was a lot more, cloak and dagger. So every generation's change, and hopefully it will grow and keep growing to the point where it's just a singular, pleasant experience for everyone when they go to their first gay bar and they have their first, I suppose, which removes slightly, but it removes the insecurities that we've carried with us.
Here I was standing at a gay pride parade in Cork and thinking back over my own journey, which, my gay journey hasn't been an easy one. It hasn't been easy for anybody in my generation. And to quote a friend of mine, sure, we're great to be as good as we are. you know. And I did have that sense of, of pride that I reached the stage in my life reasonably sane.
Looking back on loafers, people have told me, older people who came out in slightly difficult times, that loafers was a great refuge for them, you know. And I'm quite moved by that. I mean, I don't think I'm any kind of hero or anything like that. And I didn't set out to become a kind of a hero looking after gay people. The gay thing kind of evolved by itself organically, you know. But to be told that and to be told then that, you know, that the place was a refuge for gay people, to me is fantastic. I love to hear that. And when I go to places now, and including loafers now or chambers, and see how stroppy all the young crowd are, I kind of like it in one way. And I think, you know, I think it's great that you can be that upfront about your sexuality. But a lot of people kind of paved the way for that, and a lot of people got harmed and beaten up, and a lot of people quietly took their own life who couldn't come out, you know. So for me, there's all of that kind of history there, you know.
It's just, you're going to meet certain people, even within your family, that are, how would you say, they want to have the 2.5 children with the white fence at the front and have nothing come to their door. But when something does, they don't know how to deal with it. Whereas the way myself and Tracy look at things is, we've dealt with an awful lot in the short space of time within our relationship.
There's a new term I heard recently called post-gay, and I think it refers to someone who's like that, they kind of come out, no issues, anybody, their family or friends come out maybe in school and they're confident, and it's just as easy as someone who likes girls, a straight guy who likes girls, and they don't have any connection to like gay activism or anything. So, which is a positive thing. I mean, we'd all want that, really, when we were growing up, to be just totally normal.
Like, I think an important lesson to a lot of people when they're young, they should be taught about loving yourself. It, you know, like in Ireland, that can be mocked and laughed at. You know, people laugh at the fact, oh, you're getting counselling, whatever, you must be mad. But there's a lot to be said for seeking help. There's a lot to be said for feeling happy about yourself, you know. Let's go back to that commandment we hear, which, you know, love one another, love your neighbour as yourself, you know. Yes, it's a religious commandment, but what is it saying? Love your neighbour as yourself. Like, we were taught to love the neighbour, but nothing but as yourself. You know, I never heard that message growing up, loving yourself at all. Not from any church or...
Well, I just think for anybody new coming on the scene who's young, just don't fall into too much, because, you know, the rug can be pulled. If you don't fit in, like I still don't fit in sometimes. I still feel like, even though, forget being gay just as a person, I still feel I'm out of sync sometimes with other people. But that's just the way I am. But I think if you're young and you're going to come out, just don't buy into it all, the partying and the good time with your friends, because it can be taken in a heartbeat. You have to be careful of yourself. Don't give everything. Hold a bit back. Just keep yourself, you know, don't get too sucked into it. It's lovely when the journey's going good, but when the journey falls apart, you can be left on your own. Not saying that wouldn't happen in the straight world, but you just have to be more secure because you have a long way to fall back if you're going to invest totally in it. So have a bit of both, a nice mixture if possible, and just be careful.
I think we have to be quite proud in Cork of having, like, it's the only place in Ireland that has a gay centre and a women's centre. Nowhere else in Ireland has it.
Daniel Corkery, a great Cork writer, writing about Irish culture that was repressed by the foreign invader, and called his book The Hidden Ireland. Well, there are lots of hidden Irelands. The people who fought in World War I from this country being part of another hidden Ireland. But I think gay and lesbian history in Ireland has very much been a hidden history. And it's no harm to start talking about it. A lot of it has not been pleasant, some of it has been sordid, but it's part of our history and as a nation, and it's important that it be recognised.